Welcome back, it's your boy Joshy, and today I'm bringing you a review of the best movie you've never heard of. It's a movie called Tremors. You can watch it on the internet or something, I don't know. This is a movie, I saw it years ago and I thought it was a comedy, and it wasn't until I was working on this video that I looked up the IMDb page and I realized that it's supposed to be a horror film. So if we go to the description of the movie, it says it's a hilarious action comedy. But then, if you look at the genre down below, horror. Like, pick a plot and stick with it, guys. What is going on? Description: the eccentric residents of Perfection, Nevada with Reba? I don't remember Reba in this movie. Spoiler warning, we're going to go deep into the bowels of this movie and you are going to be spoiled. The opening scene of this movie is Kevin Bacon peeing off of a cliff and picking his wedgie, walking to his truck. So you already know this is going to be good. So Kevin goes back to the truck and turns out Kevin Bacon's name in the movie is Valentine, or Val for short. He's with this other guy named Earl. They're our main characters, although I don't know why the main character isn't Reba, because that's way better. Find out that Val and Earl are ranch hands, that's their job, just doing odd jobs around this little town. So Val and Earl are driving around and they're heading back to the town, and all of a sudden they look off into the distance in the middle of nowhere and there's a girl standing there for some reason. And so they bust off this road, which is a dirt road anyway. They bust off this road going like 80 miles an hour and are flying over to see this girl because they want to see if she's attractive or not. So they pull up on her. Turns out her name is Rhonda. Rhonda! That was weird. Rhonda is a college student, and she's visiting for the semester, and she's researching earthquakes. This is the first time in the movie we kind of have a hint that something strange is going on. Like, there's this girl out there researching earthquakes. Like, what is going on? Why are you researching earthquakes in the middle of paradise? What is this place called? Perfection, Nevada. She's looking at the seismograph, and she's getting all these readings that they haven't seen before, she hasn't seen before, and so another hint that's like something strange going on. What is it? But they don't know it's strange yet. Rhonda's kept this to herself, so she's leaving the town folk to, you know, live or die by their own free choice. Okay, so we're gonna fast forward a little bit, and Val and Earl, they get back in their truck, they go back into town, they get into town, and apparently town is literally one store, and this store is like 80 square feet, and we find out that the townsfolk have nothing to do because there's like 12 of them, and they're literally always at the store. Like, all of them, all the time, they're always at the store. So Earl's walking to the store, and they meet Melvin, who's this kid in the town. He's like 14 years old, and apparently no one likes him because Earl literally gives him a death threat as they're walking to the store.
Melvin, touch that truck and die.
You probably only see the kid 5 or 6 times throughout the movie, but almost every scene that Melvin is his name is in the movie, someone threatens him. Like, I don't know what Melvin did, but everyone in Perfection, Nevada needs to take a little bit of a chill pill. After all that, we finally get Val and Earl into the store, and like I said, everyone's there, and it really seems like nobody likes living in this place. And also, how do you support, there's 12 people, how do you support yourself in a town of 12 people? We're gonna fast forward a little bit more, and Rhonda's doing some stuff out in the desert, looks super boring, and the ground starts shaking, and then all of a sudden there's like a big like hill that comes out of the ground, it's like following her to her truck, and she narrowly escapes whatever that was, because this is a horror film. So she has to narrowly escape. She didn't see it, she doesn't know what's going on, but she does know that something weird's going on with the seismographs. This movie bounces around a lot, so I'm bouncing around a lot, and then I bounce around a lot. Just bear with me. Alright, so now we're at a scene with Val and Earl. This is a pivotal moment in the movie because they're actually emptying Melvin's trailer's, or his parents' trailer, I guess, sewage tank, and so they're sucking out the poo out of the sewage tank, and they're like, I hate this, I want to leave. And then all of a sudden they get, the thing breaks and they get spewed in poo. And so like, you know what, that's it, that's the last straw, we're getting out of town. But on the way out of town, they pass a power line and they see somebody up there and then realize it's their buddy, I don't know the guy's name. And so they stop and like, why is he up there? And they start calling his name, but he doesn't answer. So Val climbs up the power line to see what's going on with this guy, and turns out he's dead. They head back to town to let everybody know what's going on. They want to use their phones so they can call the emergency services because they have 0 police actually in that town, which is weird. So they drive back to town and they pass these road workers, and this road worker's jackhammering, and jackhammers into something, and all of a sudden this blood starts coming out of the ground. You don't know what it is, and all of a sudden his leg gets wrapped up in the cord and just whatever's under the ground just takes him, and he's gone. And of course, just like anybody, Val and her are like, we're Audi 5000, we're getting out of here, we want nothing to do with this. So they hop back in their truck to fly out of there, and they're like, nothing can stop us now, we're leaving, we're not doing this. Foreshadowing much? Yes. Then 8 seconds later, they run into an avalanche and they can't go through. They're trying to get out of town, and then they stop. They find someone else that's dead, and they're like, we got to get out of here. Somehow we got to get out of here. Well, apparently they back up and they crash into like this hill, and their truck that they were just off-roading going like 80 miles an hour with no problem got hung up on something on this little hill. So they were able to get out of there, and they head back to town, and this is where things really start getting good. And so once they get back to the store, where luckily everybody's hanging out again, they find some snake-looking thing on the bottom of the truck, and they pull it off, and apparently they're like, the snake was holding us there when we got stuck. And so the snake, in their minds, was holding the bottom of their truck in place, and that's why they couldn't move in the scene just a second ago. Seems logical, right? At this point, I still haven't seen Reba. Like, what is going on? Anyway, this guy that owns the store buys a snake. He was gonna sell it to the townsfolk to take pictures. It's kind of weird. But that's what you do. You take pictures with the dead snake if you live in Paradise, Nevada. Perfection, Nevada, excuse me. Because you have nothing else to do. And then they realize that the snake was eating people. There's not a murder. They thought it was a murder. It's not a murder. This snake was eating people. And somehow they do calculations like, there must be more than one snake! Even though we didn't know what it was, now that we killed one, there must be more snakes. All right, so now we're back in the desert again, in the middle of nowhere. It's like the evening time, and we have two characters we've never seen before. They're married, they're building a house in the middle of the desert. That's where we get this glorious scene where a snake eats their station wagon, right? Okay, so it's a pretty good sized snake. So the town is losing it at this point. They like don't know what's going on. Hey, there's Reba. This movie just got way better. Thank you for coming out, Reba. We appreciate it. And in all fairness, she may have been in another scene. I just didn't want to rewind it, and so I'm not sure if this was her first scene or not. All the townsfolk are gathered back in the store, and they're trying to contact the next town over, which is called Bixby. They can't drive there because of the avalanche on the road, and they can't call them because the phone lines are down. Because this is a horror movie. Or comedy. I'm still not really sure where we stand on the horror versus comedy thing. So they decided they are going to ride horses, and Al and Val are the best riders, right? Well, they're the main characters, so they have to be. They're going to ride over to Bixby. They're going to save the day, and the people from Bixby are going to come over and get eaten by the snake. I'm not sure if Bixby has like snake hunting stuff. Like, what is Bixby gonna do? Then Melvin busts out, acts like he's getting eaten by a snake, and half the town literally get it together and they threaten him for it. So people don't like Melvin in this. Off in the distance, we see Val and Earl go right off on their horses to save the day. It's majestic. Then they roll up on that car from a couple scenes ago that's eaten, and the headlights are pointing up in the air. And they're like, yeah, no. If a snake can eat the station wagon, we're getting the heck out of here. We're not dealing with this. So they're riding back to Bixby in the middle of the desert, and the horses get freaked out. They completely stop because horror movies, if you get scared, you stop instead of running away. And that's a theme in this movie. You'll see it in a second. And all of a sudden, a snake pops out of the ground and starts eating the horses. And that's when they realize the snakes are under the ground. That's how you get you, because they come up and they grab you and they take you down. Except it's not a snake. It's a giant worm. And the giant worm has little worm snakes on its tongue, and that's what's been grabbing people. So this movie's getting really good. And now you see why I love this movie so much. They try to jump across this concrete drain ditch that's in the middle of the desert. It doesn't really make sense what's going on in Profession Nevada. But they jump over it, and the worm slams into the concrete, and it dies. And they think they're heroes, and rightly so. They just killed the giant worm, and they're gonna go tell the town folks that they're home free. We killed the worm. We're awesome. Like, you guys, like, you're welcome. We're Val and Earl. We can do whatever we want. Except if you look at the time of the movie, it's only a third over. We still got a ways to go. I wonder what the end of the movie's gonna be about. At this point of watching the movie, I was like, I really still have an hour left of this? But you know what they say? The early worm gets the humans. Rhonda's like nowhere to be seen in any of the movie. Like, she's in for like 30 seconds, and then all of a sudden she shows up, helps kill this worm in the drain ditch, and acts like she knows what's going on. So now they just killed the one worm, so the three other worms are super mad because they just killed their friend. At least I assume they're friends. Then the seismograph starts going crazy, and they know another worm is close, and so they have to get off the dirt because they don't get sucked through the ground by a giant worm or the worm tongues. And so they find a big rock. And from here on out, that is literally the entire plot of the movie, where everyone in town is just on one object, and they just try to get to another object and not get eaten by the worms. It's like that old saying, being stuck between a rock and a giant worm. Then Rhonda gets it. The worms can tell where people are from the vibrations of the ground. So anytime you move, the worm knows where you are. Side note, this is the same worm that shows up in SpongeBob, if you remember that.
That's not the worm. That's his tongue.
Stuck on this rock for 2 days now. They look down on the side of the rock and there's these super smooth long sticks that aren't going to give them splinters, and off into the distance there is another rock the exact distance away that the poles could be used for pole vaulting. So that was convenient. They get into the truck, they drive back to town, and there's no worms, even though the worm was following the vibration, and then they drove in a truck which vibrates the ground more. But luckily the worm just stopped and didn't fall into the town. They tell everybody that the vibration is what's going to attract the worm and to stop doing anything. But nobody thinks to tell anybody else, like the kids, about this. Like, hey, you might get eaten by a worm because like Melvin's bouncing a basketball and Susie or whatever her name is was on the pogo stick. Like, maybe we should tell the kids. All the adults are safe in the shop, but not the kids. And you guessed it, the worm shows up. They all run inside, and luckily the worm can't get to you if you're inside, right? Right? This worm, I call him Tony, he can tell that he's about to get a bunch of people for lunch, so he calls his buddy. I call his buddy worm number 2. So we got Tony and worm number 2 over here. They're about to have a little buffet of people in perfection about it. Tony and worm number 2 are literally causing havoc. They're on a rampage, and then it cuts, and literally like nothing's happening. Remember when I said that worms can't eat people if you're in the building? Yeah, well, that was wrong. Either Tony or worm number 2 just pops up through the floor and eats the guy that owns the store. Then the same worm, or maybe the other one, I'm not exactly sure, they did a pretty lousy job of like identifying and putting identification marks on these worms for the viewer pleasureship. The rest of them just end up on the roof, and so everyone in the town's up on the roofs. Finally, at an hour into the movie, we see Reba for like the second or third time only. She's a singer now, Reba. In like real life, Reba's a singer. Probably because she already topped her career in acting with this movie, and she had to move on to something else. So Reba's up the hill where her and her husband have like a house up there, and so Tony hears Reba and her husband up at the hill, so Tony's heading up to the hill, but they've been gone somewhere for like most of the movie, so they don't really know what's going on, and they definitely don't know about Tony. And when Tony gets there, they unload on him. Like, they have a million guns up on this wall, and this is just making Tony mad. Reba, you have all of these guns, and you just shot him with a flare gun? Like, what the heck? In the end, Reba wins, just like always. Also, on a side note, what is going on with this door? Did somebody walk into the scene and then realize they were shooting and just stopped? This was probably a super expensive scene to film, and they're like, nah, we can't refilm it. And of course, everyone in the town is super happy that Reba killed Tony, especially Melvin.
Way to go, dude!
Because Tony is now dead, I'm now calling worm number 2 Tony, because I like the name Tony more. So now we've got new Tony. He's coming to avenge Tony's death. Tony is straight up picking up buildings now, like picking up the foundation, shaking them, putting them back down. Then Tony gets Nestor. And at this point, the town has like 3 people in it. It started with 12, and the worms, Tony is like eating everybody, so there's like not very many people left. I think they should have set this movie in New York City. That would have been way more entertaining. Then Earl remembers they have a giant tractor, but it's way off in the distance, and so they have to figure out a way to get from the roof to the tractor off in the distance, because they figure the tractor's so heavy that Tony can't eat the tractor. And if they get on the tractor, they can drive up to the mountains, which are granite, and Tony can't eat granite. Kevin Bacon, or Sal, or whatever the guy's name is, decides he's gonna be the one to run over the tractor, and so he runs over the tractor, and just like any good horror film, he stops to look back in the middle of his run. He would have gotten there if he would have stopped, but he stops to look back. Tony apparently sees him and flies over to Val, catches up to him, and so Val stops, and apparently Tony can't find him. Us as the viewers and the townspeople know that the worms hear from vibration, and so the townspeople are like, well, we need to distract Tony, and so Val can finish running to the tractor, doesn't get eaten. So what do? They start yelling, like talking, yelling, not like jumping up and down to make vibration, like yelling at the worm who only hears through vibration. Anyway, Rhonda is on the water tower. She vandalizes it and kicks the pipe off, and then the water starts dripping down, and Tony hears the water dripping down. He's like, hey, I gotta go check out that new exciting sound over there, the vibration. So he pieces out from Val, so he's free to run to the tractor, and new Tony runs back over. Crawls? Does he eat the dirt? he eats the dirt on the way back over to Rhonda on the water tower. I don't really know. That's the least of the worries about this movie making sense. Alright, so Val has won and picked up this tractor and trailer. They're driving up to the mountain, so everybody in the town's on this trailer, which seems good for Tony, because if he can get them, then he has all the townspeople in the middle of the dirt where he can just eat them all. And of course, they're almost to the mountain when new Tony and worm number 4, that's what I'm calling the last worm, they make a booby trap, and the tractor like falls into this booby trap, and it's like a hole under the dirt, and now the entire town is stranded. Everyone ran over to this rock. Like I told you, the rest of this movie is literally just the townspeople going from one object to another object. Then they decide the best thing to do is tie a pipe bomb to a rope and swing it around like a crazy person in hopes that new Tony will eat it, and he does. So new Tony lost, he got blown up from the inside, and they only have one more worm to kill, and then they win their completely destroyed town back. Worm number 4, I'm now going to start calling him Tim because I like Tim better than worm number 4. Well, Tim's a little bit smarter than both Tony and new Tony, and so they throw another bomb at him on the string, so he eats the bomb, but then he spits it back out at the rock. So Val, Earl, and Rhonda make a run for it, and somehow like 8 seconds later, they're like a half a mile away from the rock they're supposed to be on. Everybody else stayed on the rock, but apparently those three decided just to peace out. So this is almost the exact same scene as when Val was on the way to the tractor. It's the rock, Tim, and then the 3 people, and they're trying to get to the rock, and so the people on the rock need to distract Tim, so they start yelling at him again, like, jump up and down, it's not that hard to figure out. Like, you guys have been living this for days. I'm an hour into this movie, I already know that doesn't work. Anyway, so Val, Rhonda, and Earl are realizing they need to do something else because they're just going to get eaten by Tim, and Tim's going to be super happy about it. And so they run away from the rock towards a giant cliff, literally bigger than the Grand Canyon in Paradise, Nevada. Perfection, why can I not remember the name of this? So Tim hears them running and starts to follow them, and then he just shoots out the side of the cliff to his demise, and you realize just how happy you are that this movie is now over. It's the last scene, and Val and Rhonda decide to kiss, and it makes it the classical movie trope. Guy meets girl, girl and guy kill a bunch of worms, guy and girl fall in love. Like, come on, let's do something original here. This was a fantastic movie. I recommend everybody watch it. Or not. I don't think your life is going to be worse if you don't watch it, but it might be worse if you do watch it, actually. And if you like the movie, you need more Tremors in your life, you can watch Tremors 2, Aftershocks, Tremors 3, Back to Perfection, Tremors 4, The Legend Begins, or Tremors 5, Bloodlines. And if that's not enough for you, check out Tremors A Cold Day in Hell, or Tremors Shrikers Island. And wow, that's a lot, and I don't think Reba is in any of the other ones, so they're definitely not worth watching. I was going to make a joke about a full review of all of them, but no, I will absolutely not be doing that. I thought this was such a great idea in my head, and now I am very much questioning that decision. Thank you for watching this. Also, I am sorry that you sat through this entire thing if you are still watching this. What am I doing with my life? I'm editing this, and I realized this movie's even better because if you played it in reverse, it's about a worm that throws a bunch of people up and then built a town for them.